Good evening and welcome to the 1143rd regular meeting and public hearing of the Livonia City Planning Commission. I wish to inform all interested persons in the audience that for petitions on tonight's agenda, which involve a question of zoning, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council, after holding their own public hearing, will make the final determination as to whether a petition is approved or denied. The Planning Commission holds only public hearing on requests for preliminary plats and or vacating petitions. The Commission's recommendation is forwarded to the City Council for the final determination as to whether the petition is accepted or rejected. If a petition requesting a waiver of use or a site plan is denied tonight, the petitioner will have 10 days in which to appeal the decision in writing to the City Council. Resolutions adopted by the City Planning Commission will become effective 7 days after the date of adoption. The Planning Commission and professional staff have reviewed each of these petitions upon their filing. The staff has furnished the Commission with both approving and denying resolutions, which the Commission may or may not use, depending on the outcome of the proceedings tonight. If the Secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mrs. Smiley.
Present.
Mrs. McHugh.
Present.
Mr. Bonjero. Here. Mr. Long.
Is here.
Mr. Ventura. Is here. Caremagno is here. Chairman Wilshaw.
Is here. Also with us tonight, we have Mark Tormina and Stephanie Reese from our Planning Department. And again, I just want to remind folks in the audience with each of these petitions, the petitioner will have an opportunity to come forward, speak to the item, and the Commission will then ask questions of the petitioner, and then we'll have an opportunity for folks in the audience who wish to speak for or against each of these petitions to also come forward at that time. So just pay attention and we will give you that opportunity if you wish to speak. Again, if the Secretary is ready, please begin with the first item on our agenda.
Petition 2019-02-01-02, submitted by Etkin Management LLC, pursuant to Section 23.01 of the City of Livonia zoning ordinance, number 543, as amended, requesting to rezone the property at 37640 7 Mile Road and part of the property at 19290 Victor Parkway, located on the north side of 7 Mile Road between Newburgh Road and the I-275-96 Expressway in the southeast quarter of Section 6 from rural urban farm to high-rise multiple family residential district, maximum 4 stories.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We'll start with Mr. Tormina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a rehearing involving the rezoning of 2 parcels that are located at the northeast corner of 7 Mile and Victor Parkway. These 2 parcels are separated by a drainage channel. The addresses are 37640 7 Mile Road and 19290 Victor Parkway. The 7 Mile Road parcel is the larger of the 2, that's 6.38 acres. The Victor Parkway parcel is 3.79, so altogether the land area involved in this request is 10.17 acres. The north 100 feet of 19290 Victor Parkway is excluded from the rezoning request. The reason for the rezoning is to allow for the development of a multifamily residential apartment complex. Apartment complexes or apartments are treated as a permitted use in the R8 zoning. Buildings are required to be over 2 stories with a maximum height of 4 stories. Directly to the north of the properties are residential homes that are along Northland Street. To the east is a child care center, which is zoned RC, condominium residential. South, across 7 Mile Road, is a small office building as well as Mission Health Medical Center, Zone PO, professional high-rise office, and residential homes that are part of the Caliburn Manor and Melody Manor subdivisions, zoned R3, 1-family residential. And then west, across Victor Parkway, are office buildings zoned OS, as well as a pond that is used for stormwater management. A little bit about the site's history. It was in 1997 that a consent judgment was entered into between the city and Oakwood Health Systems. The consent judgment divided the site into 3 distinct parts and addressed the future development of each part separately. Parcel A, which includes most of what is 37640 7 Mile Road, is located south of the drain, and despite the current RUF zoning, the consent judgment treats this parcel as if it is zoned office. There was a 3-story medical office and ambulatory care facility that was approved for this site, but never developed. Parcel B encompasses a portion of what is now 19290 Victor Parkway and contains about 2 acres north of the drain at the west end of the property. Parcel B is also zoned RUF and is required under the consent judgment to remain as open space and is subject to an open space preservation agreement. And then Parcel C, which is mostly on the north side of the creek at the east end of the property, and this includes a portion of 19290 Victor Parkway. Originally, Parcel C was intended to be developed consistent with multifamily housing under the RC condominium residential zoning classification. However, in 2006, Talon Development Group sought and obtained approval to amend the consent judgment in order to develop the easterly part of this site as a child care center. The consent judgment also requires a 100-foot wide landscape buffer along the north end of Parcel B and a portion of Parcel C, all of which is included in the legal description of the petitioner's property, but it is excluded from the area proposed to be rezoned. Over time, there have been 3 amendments to the consent judgment. The latest version allows the current owner, Edkin Equities, to construct a 1-story, 54,000 square foot office research building. The current request seeks the rezoning of parcels A and B and a portion of Parcel C for the development of a multifamily housing under the R8 classification. The R8 district treats multiple family housing as a permitted use, and the maximum ground coverage by principal structure is limited to 20%. Density, which is the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, is determined according to the height of the building, which is expressed in stories, and the corresponding number of bedrooms per dwelling unit. The yard setbacks are also determined by building height. There was a preliminary plan that was submitted with the application that shows 2 apartment buildings. The main apartment building would be on the south side of the drain, whereas the second and smaller apartment building would be located on the north side. Parking is shown both in the form of surface lots as well as a multi-level garage or deck that would be incorporated within the footprint of the apartment building. The master plan shows the address at 376407 Miles Corridor Commercial, and then 19290 Victor Parkway as Parks and Community. And Mr. Chairman, we received 18 letters of opposition to this rezoning petition, as well as a protest petition that contains 9 signatures. We have provided each of the commissioners with all of the correspondence received in connection with this item. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tormina. Is there any additional new correspondence beyond the
There is not.
letters? Okay, very good, thank you. Do we have any questions for the planning staff? I don't see any. So we'll start with our petitioner. The petitioner is here tonight. Ask that you please come forward.
Good evening, Josh Martin with Etkin, 150 West 2nd Street, Royal Oak.
Good evening.
And I've got John Woods here with DTN Management, our partner.
All right, thank you, sir. And we have heard this item previously at a meeting, but due to the sign not being posted properly, you need to start the process over. So is there anything that you'd like to speak to in regards to that?
No, I mean, nothing's changed with the plan since the last time we met. Mark's summary is exactly what it is, so we'd open it up for any questions that you guys have.
Okay, there's no additional overview or any additional information you want to provide right now? Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. With that, is there any questions for our petitioner? Mrs. Smiley?
Yes, I want to talk to you about, this is going to be 4 stories, but with the land itself, isn't what you have, like, it goes uphill on Victor Parkway, is that right?
No, actually, it goes from, it kind of drops from west to east.
That's,
The
yeah, I was saying it
property
wrong,
actually
okay.
goes down,
Okay.
actually head east, and that's where the detention for this site actually is.
Okay, now, would you be across the street, I guess this is really for Mark, are they across the street from where the new hotels, Marriott's are going? The Loft and the Element? Would they be across the street, or are they north or south of that?
That site is a little further to the north. It's not directly west of this site. It's northwest of this site.
So it's north and west, and
Not
those,
by much, but yes, a little
okay,
bit.
and those are four-story, aren't they? The Marriott's,
6 stories.
6 stories, okay.
Correct.
That was my
And
question.
just to reiterate, there is elevation change from north to south.
That was my
North is
question.
higher,
Okay,
but it kind of slopes to the southeast.
so,
But the north property line would be higher than it is at the south.
okay,
And
The north-
Councilmember John Woods-Deteen, if I could just clarify,
sure,
from kind of the middle of our parcel, of parcel A and B to the north,
okay,
to what I'll call the first floor elevations of the homes to the north on Northdale.
right,
The lowest first floor elevations, which is where the first floor where people would be standing on their homes, the difference is about 12 feet. The biggest difference is closer to 19 feet. So parcel A and B sit 12 to 19 feet lower than the first floors of the homes on Northdale to the north, just to clarify.
thank you.
You're welcome.
That was my question, thank you. Although I didn't put it out there very good, that was my question, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Smiley. Any other questions for our petitioner?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Caremagno.
can you explain the parking again, for the benefit of most of these people here that weren't here last go-round, how that parking works? I mean, when you hear parking garage, you maybe you're frightened by that, or people can be. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so this design is classified as a wrapped type system. So basically, the parking structure, if you look at this drawing, is in the pinker color. The yellow is the residential. So you have a 3-story deck, but you have 4-story residential that wraps around the north, west, south, and east. You enter the deck through that roundabout that's just south of the creek. And for lack of better terms, the deck portion of the parking cars are hidden by the residential. So you don't see that from any street view, and you don't see it from the north as well.
Will you see cars driving up and down the ramp to get there, or will you not see that yet either?
No, the ramp actually is on the south side of the deck, so you would see cars pulling in, they drive over to the south side, use the ramp, it's all internal to the ramp, so you would not see that because the residential is higher in story than the parking structure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions for our petitioner? Mr. Ventura?
Mr. Swardini, can you address the traffic pattern that this development will result in on a daily basis with that of, say, an office building, which I know you have a great deal of experience with? And
Yeah.
it was initially an office building that was approved on this site.
Right.
So can you talk about the difference in patterns on a daily basis?
Yeah, and John will jump in too, but the way we looked at this is, we believe that most people that would enter or exit the site are going to use Victor Parkway. We believe that people are going to head to Victor Parkway, south to 7 Mile, get to the intersection, and a vast majority of the population of the building would be heading towards 275 or westerly to Haggerty. We do have a curb cut that's shown here on the south part of the property on 7 Mile. But recognizing that most of the people are going to be using Victor Parkway, we'd also entertain, signing that intersection, however it may be, so that it's right turn only to go towards 275 to alleviate any stresses and pressures that there would be with turns along 7 Mile to the east. But we believe Victor Parkway and heading to the west is primarily going to be the traffic pattern for exiting, and on the inbound side, we believe that people will stop at the intersection of Victor and 7 Mile and turn left at the signalized turn at 7 and Victor.
And just to add to that, traffic patterns, traffic counts, and ingress, egress out of these buildings are very different than office buildings. Josh has got some empirical data that he's pulled from our experience in owning these. Number one, in the buildings where these are renters by choice, as we've described, on a luxury property. The people that stay at home and work from home is a greater percentage, so you don't get the normal commuter time traffic from those folks. Also, there's typically a broader distribution of the times that they leave and they come back, because we believe that given healthcare and some of the other businesses And jobs that are available in the area are probably going to be kind of non-traditional hours. There will be people that may be working morning shift, afternoons, evenings. So, you know, that again is very different than office. And I'll let Josh talk to the numbers. But, you know, those are a couple of big disparate differences that we'd like to point out because we know that that's a concern with the traffic. But the other thing that we've talked about in this project is its accessibility. This location, one of the reasons we like it is its accessibility to 275. You know, we feel, and we certainly don't know for a fact, that a majority of this traffic is going to 275 in the morning. People are not coming out and probably turning left and going to 7 Mile, nor are they probably going up Victor Parkway up to 8 Mile and turning right and going east. It's hard to say, but we really feel the 275 corridor, along with everything else that's around it, is really the draw, and that's where people are going to move up and down is those corridors, these main arterial corridors in Metro Detroit.
And as far as the peak demands for traffic, just to kind of talk about that, on an office building, which we've studied this a lot in our portfolio, but on an office building, your peak demand generation is usually in the AM between 7:45 and 9 o'clock, for example. And in the PM, it's between 4:15 and 5:30, 6 o'clock, although the 4:15 is starting to slowly peel back a little bit as people work under flex time and so on and so forth. Trips to the site, usually 92% of the trips to the site, or 92% of your total peak parking are trips to the site in the morning. So for instance, the office building that was designed and approved previously for this site had around 220 parking spaces. You could expect a peak demand of around 180 trips, 150 to 180 trips in the morning inbound to the site. And at night, because people tend to, peel off from an office building staggered through the afternoon, at night, you'd have around 90 to 120 trips leaving the site. The residential building, for example, we believe will have around the same number of trips, but the difference is, or potential trips, because of the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom scenario. If you take the industry standards, and John's got a lot of data on their portfolio, the number of cars that would be entering and leaving max would be around the same 220 vehicles per day. But the scatter diagram, if you will, are times for when people leave, because you're opposite flow in a residential than you are office in the morning, you're leaving versus coming to, is not at a peak over an hour. It's scattered over several hours because, as John talked about, people are leaving to go to different types of jobs and they leave at different types of the day. And then the same thing holds true at night. So you have a little bit of a different scenario. So you're not leaving and entering at the same time, but the total amount of cars and the total potential peak number of trips to that site would be relatively the same.
So if I net those comments out, you have the same number of trips for both the residential and the office development, but not the density in a shorter period of time. So it's, you don't get the density out of the residential development that you would get out of the office building.
Yeah, at those peak 1 hours, 7:45 to 8:15 to 8:30. That's what we believe. We primarily develop office. John and his group primarily develop residential. And in looking at the data between our portfolios, that's what we've empirically seen, and that's what we believe for this site to be true as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura. Any other questions for our petitioner?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Caremagna.
you said something a few minutes ago that caught my attention. I think you need to tell this crowd. You said luxury apartment living. What does that mean?
Well, luxury, you really have two classes of apartments, or three. You've got affordable projects that are typically subsidized based on the area median income. And then you have what we call renter by necessity. That's somebody that doesn't have a choice from a housing standpoint, and apartment living is the only option. And then you have renter by choice, and we typically qualify that as a market rate luxury community. And that's what this community is. The average rents are in the $1,800 to $1,900 range, and people are here by choice. They're here because they like the location, the flexibility. There's a myriad of reasons, but based on the average median incomes of the people that we have in other like buildings, and that are supported also by other studies and data shops. The median income in this community will probably be about $90,000 a year. So clearly somebody that makes roughly $100,000 a year can afford to live in a condo, they can afford to live in a single-family house, but they will choose to live here for whatever reason. That's what I mean by luxury. It's by choice.
And you find in your other properties, this is sustainable, it holds up, people continue to want this type of living?
We do. We have a project, a community that's very similar to this. Matter of fact, it's on I-127, just north of I-96. We actually have 3 projects like this. 2 of them are on I-96. One's in DeWitt Township, one's in the city of Grand Rapids, and then this one in Lansing that's a 5-story with retail underneath it that's behind the Eastwood Heights Mall. And that project was stabilized, which means it was substantially full in 2016, and it's been full ever since. And rents are actually probably higher than our financial pro forma for this project, but we're being conservative, and we think this project in this location is going to be more successful, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caremagno. Any other questions for our petitioner?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bonjero.
I guess, I think a lot of people are like concerned that the rents are pretty high. So the economy's doing really well right now, and that's great. People can afford it. Most of these renters will probably be a little bit younger, I would guess. And they're probably maxed out, a lot of them, on what they can afford. And, they don't have a lot of experience, so they're borrowing and renting and whatever else. So a downturn comes, can't afford the rent. So you start getting people leaving. What's the business plan to offset these vacancies to stop you from dropping the rent drastically and bringing in just to fill units? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and respectfully, I don't agree with that entire scenario, because I don't think a large majority will be maxed out, so to speak, from an income standpoint. In Lansing, we've got median incomes of $96,000. I know we've got a couple of people there in the mid-6-figure range. Now, barring massive, layoffs, job losses, I mean, those are things that I can't really speak to as far as the, a recession or the state of the economy. But I think what's important for you is to understand how we operate as a company and why it's important to understand a little bit about DTN. We own roughly 9,000 apartment units, all in Michigan. We've been in business for 45 years. We've never lost a property to foreclosure or a distressed sale, ever, not one. And part of that reason is because we run our business relatively conservatively, and that's one of the reasons where we feel fortunate to be a partner with Etkin, because we don't put ourselves in a position as an owner-operator to have to necessarily deal with that. Have we had properties that have had vacancy or occupancy issues? Sure we have. But we've been able to manage through it. We've been able to capitalize our projects accordingly, no different than anybody else runs their business in the face of adversity and a potential recession. We feel like we know what we're doing, and we've got the experience to back it up. And I don't think there are a lot of apartment operator and owners in southeastern Michigan that can honestly say they've been in business for 50 years and have never lost a project. We can say that. So I think it's a combination of a couple things.
Plus to add to it, you may want to talk about, the people that are looking to rent these types of properties are not 100% younger people. For the first time in probably a long time, or maybe ever, the 20-somethings or 30-somethings want the same thing as someone that could be 55 years old or an empty nester. They want the same thing. So some of the people that will be renting here may not have the same restraints, if you will, on resources or capital that a younger person may have, but you might have those two different types of renters at the same time, and John can talk to that.
Yeah, the information, I don't know, I think we provided it to city council. I'm not sure if all the council, the planning commission members got the same packet that we provided, but we actually sent a package out from a couple of the top multifamily organizations that talks about how there's been this transformational change in multifamily over the last couple of years. And it's to exactly what Josh has mentioned, is you've now got household formation in the United States that is now a majority rental versus home ownership. And a lot of that is by choice, and it's not just in the big metro cities like Detroit, Chicago, and others. And it's moving back into the suburbs. And so, you know, it's not the same renter that even I was accustomed to 15 or 20 years ago, where oftentimes, to your point, the people that were higher income were in an apartment for a sake of convenience, and maybe they were transitional between jobs or between homes, but it wasn't a way of life, and it wasn't necessarily a permanent choice. We're actually seeing more permanence and longer term than we've seen in the past. And there's a lot of information in those reports that we sent really support that. And again, not just in the big municipalities, it's also in, you know, what we call them the suburban urban environments, or the suburban environments, and that's really where Livonia fits, is there are larger suburban communities that have a lot to offer, where when people decide they want to transition from a single-family home or maybe even come out of a metro Detroit to go back into the suburbs, they have options, and they do it by choice.
Just one last question. What's your vacancy percentage on your properties? Like, what can you expect? Do you think you're gonna be 100% leased out here, or?
No, most communities are not 100 just because transitional people moving in and out, but I mean, for the last several years, and I'll say in the suburbs, it's even higher than the metro areas. We'll be in the mid-90s all day long, and the, you know, break-even point on a community like this is probably 82 or 83%, so you've got to really have some challenges before, you know, a property consistent like this, or make some mistakes, to where you're at least not paying your bills. But for us, a low 90s is a bad day. Mid-90s is pretty consistent. Anything beyond that, your rents probably aren't high enough.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. And Mr. Woods, we did receive that additional information in our most recent packets for this go-around.
Okay.
So we appreciate that additional information. And again, I want to remind, obviously, the commission and the folks here in the audience that this is a rezoning request, and we're focused on the zoning of the property and if that zoning is appropriate for this area. And then we're looking at, obviously, RUF to an R8 zoning. But, you know, in talking about the use of the property, we can't help but talk to some extent about how the property is going to be used in terms of the number of stories and how many units and those types of things. But we're truly focused on zoning at this point, and we'll get into the details of the actual site plan at a future date if this zoning proceeds through city council. So I just want to remind everyone of that. It's always good to have that little refresher. Is there any other questions for our petitioner from the commission? I don't see any. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. And we are going to go to the audience and look for any questions or comments from the audience. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item is welcome to come forward. We do have some folks. Feel free to come forward. You can line up at either podium. And again, we ask that you address your questions to us. Any questions that we need to go back to the petitioner to ask, we will do that at the end, so that way we're not having a back and forth debate. Feel free to start with your name and address, sir.
My name is Michael Ladwig, and my address is 18728 Susanna. I live approximately a quarter mile north of the two proposed parcels. Now, can I make a recommendation on what I think they should do with this for zoning?
You're welcome to speak
Okay.
at all.
Well, I'm in favor of the rezoning. I've heard what these gentlemen have to say, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't see anything, sure, there could be problems. I was in business for 42 years, and there's always going to be things that you can't control. We've seen that in the last 42 years. But it seems like they are good people. They've had businesses that have worked out well, and I'm for it. I wanted to address just a little bit, I think a lot of people here might have gotten this flyer that says Dear Livonia Resident, and I just want to make a comment on this flyer. I'm always skeptical when people want you to vote a certain way on something or be in favor of something, and the person who, or the group that puts this out never says who they are or what organization they represent. And it just, it's not, I don't think it's good. They made some points in here that I think are very, I don't know if they're not, they just don't seem to make sense. You know, we know it's in a high-traffic area, but it's not as bad as the traffic area in Hagerty, and I'm sure the city will do traffic studies to see if they can handle it and what they need to do to make it work. You know, there's a little bit of maneuvering that have to probably be done on Vicar Parkway heading north, no, heading south towards, you know, the houses that are south of 7 Mile, but it could all be worked out. It shouldn't be that expensive. They said that people that live there are going to be very upset because they thought they were going to be living in an area where there's 2-story houses. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've bought and sold 4 houses in my life. Never once did I wanted to look to see how tall the buildings were going to be around me. You know, I just want to make sure they had good schools, they had good property value, and it was a safe neighborhood. You know, the monthly rentals, you know, I think that's the kind of person that Livonia would like to have here. I think many of those people, like they said, they're moving, maybe they're only here for a year or 2 contract, and I wouldn't be surprised, as I've heard a lot of retirees are having a place in Florida, and they have a place up here, but they don't want to deal with a house up here, so they rent a house up here, or an apartment up here, you know, so there's a lot of good things that they do. But the main thing I wanted to say is I hope the Planning Commission doesn't take too much weight from this flyer by people who don't even say who they are. You kind of wonder what their reasons are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ladwig.
Sir, could I ask
Ms.
you
Smiley?
could I
Yes,
ask
go
you a
ahead.
question? That flyer that you got, did you get it, sir?
Mr. Ladwig?
Yeah.
Mrs. Smiley's going to
I have
ask.
just one question. Did you get that like in the mail or in your mailbox or?
I think it was rolled up and with a rubber band and put on my front door, or it was left in my mailbox where the newspaper slot is. It was not mailed to me. It had no return address. It was just put there. And it's really kind of beat up because it was raining, you know, when they did it.
And then just to clarify, you said you have no idea who wrote it or who composed it or
No.
who's in front of it,
And I
behind
can
it?
give it to you because I've already read it if you'd like to see it.
I'd love to, thanks.
Okay.
You can just leave it with,
With Ms. Reese there.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smiley. Hello, good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Philip Mihalski. I live at 18979 Glengarry Drive, which is 4 houses south of 7 Mile, immediately adjacent to the property in question right now.
Thank you.
There's a lot of great points that the petitioners have brought up. I do take objection to a lot of it. You may have seen some of this data that we, the public, have not seen, but I think it would help if it is made public, the empirical data that has been done regarding the traffic. Give us some actual numbers instead of estimates as far as rental rates. You know, proof that these are the numbers of 90% plus is a valid rate. That might assuage some of our fears. Also, with regards to the zoning, I lived in this neighborhood now for 5 years. Prior to that, I was off of Merriman and I-96 for approximately 40 years. In the 40 years, my street was Berwick Street, which abuts right up to Schoolcraft Avenue, right across a bridge going across I-96. In 35 to 40 years, I witnessed 2 accidents at that intersection. In the 5 years I've lived here, I've witnessed or seen the aftermath of at least 7 accidents between Victor Parkway and Newburgh off of 7 Mile. 7 in less than 5 years. So that's just what I've seen. The last one, there was a motorcycle that was hit by a car exiting Glengarry. It was a very hot summer day. I was there. My neighbors gave the police officer some water. I went and got him some Gatorade. We were talking with the officer. He said, this intersection, this area is a mess. Adding this kind of volume of people, I believe, will only make it worse. I do take exception to the traffic studies or the ideas that I forget the term that was used, but the density will not be so bad or will be the same as with an office building. When you have a 4-story apartment that's of this scale, probably going to have 300 to 400 units, or however many it is, I see a lot more cars than probably in an office building, a lot more traffic. I can tell you right now, turning off of Glengarry onto 7 Mile is a challenge. It will only be worse for us residents. The way the freeway comes off, the way Victor Parkway comes in, it's not a great intersection to begin with. Adding a very high density of people to it is probably not going to help anybody. And I firmly believe a lot of people will go up Victor Parkway to 8 Mile, making a left on 8 Mile, which means you're going to need to put a light there eventually too. So it's going to change traffic patterns for the entire northern quadrant of the city. With that also, with the new proposed hotels going up on Victor Parkway that are going to be 6-story, I don't know that as a resident, I really do want to see high-rise apartments across my street. I'm going to see the hotels. I already see the office center right on the corner of 7 Mile and Newburgh Road. That's fine. It's a nice office building. They take good care of it. But I really get the feeling, and it has the smell of a inner city look, a Southfield look, Westland on Marquette Avenue look, which I don't know is what Livonia wants. I really don't. The vision, the visuals of it don't fit in with what I moved to this other neighborhood. Like I said, we moved 4 or 5 years ago. We could have chose anywhere. We love Livonia because it's a family-first community. 1-bedroom apartments aren't really family first, especially at this price rate. The gentleman before me said that this might be a good idea for the snowbirds that are moving back and forth between Florida and Michigan. I don't think people are going to spend $2,000 a month to leave it vacant for 4 to 6 months a year. That's a lot of money. I see this fraught with issue, and I especially thank Mr. Bonjero for your questions about economic downturns, because as we saw in the last 10 years, that is a valid question. So I'm very concerned. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Ma'am? Since we have people at both podiums, we'll go back and forth.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Peters. I live at 18813 Glengarry Drive in the Livonia Caliburn Manor subdivision. And like other people, I have many concerns, but I brought my little map because one of my big concerns is the traffic issue. As we've talked about, that 7 Mile and Newburgh area is very congested. This little red dot is my house. Years ago, the Safety Commission took out the stop signs in a lot of residential neighborhoods because they felt yields would be better. As a result, we found in our neighborhood, since you don't stop from Caliburn all the way to Glengarry, we see people coming down our street that appear to be 30, 35 miles an hour because you don't stop. And there's one yield sign. What I'm afraid is that people, if they're coming into the 7 Mile area, whether the entrance is on 7 or whether it's on Victor Parkway, which would be blue skies, they're going to cut through our neighborhood to avoid having to turn left. It kind of makes sense. People do it already. And what's going to happen is it's just going to become that thoroughfare. Again, so people don't have to wait. I mean, I come to this intersection and I kind of chuckle and say, gosh, I'm so glad I live in this neighborhood because I can turn left right here. But that's what people are going to do. And they'll go through on blue skies as well. Again, so they can hit the light and easily cross 7 Mile. So that's my biggest concern is, you know, we're going to be used as a thoroughfare. And we moved into our house 22 years ago, and we did that because we wanted to start a family, and we chose Livonia because it is so family-oriented. We've had kids, they've gone through Livonia Public Schools. On my calculations, I think I've paid about $130,000 in taxes. But every time we have to pay that tax bill, my husband and I remind ourselves, from where we lived before, we don't mind because it's a great neighborhood. We love the city, and we just don't want to see anything that would devalue that for ourselves or our property value. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peters. We'll go over to this podium. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Lori Colley. I've lived in Caliburn Manor for 26 years. My husband and my family have been there. We have several issues with this. We don't want apartments in there for several reasons. First, I heard tonight is that it possibly would be a three-bedroom, which how are you going to stop any multifamilies? I'm going to probably be jumping around, but that came up first when I heard it tonight. How do you prevent any multifamilies from coming into one three-bedroom unit? And that would affect the number of cars that you're estimating for these, for the traffic around there. The other point I want to make is no matter where you make that exit on 7 Mile to turn right with a right turn only sign or whatever, it's going to affect our Glengarry exit. We, like the other gentleman said, we have to wait, pull into the turn lane, move over to get onto the E-way. That is just going to be a million times worse. So what I don't understand is why you're not pursuing more condos. We have a great community of condos. It would be less units. It would be people that have a sense of community and pride with their ownership rather than people that are in and out not giving a crap about Livonia. If they own it and want it and pay it, look at the condos by the post office. They're great. By the Laurel Park Mall, they're great. Quiet communities, not a lot of traffic. I think they've got a lot of units that are used their, I can't think of the word, but they're filled. So somebody did a study and said that there's 500 available high-rent apartments in our area now. So if we have that many apartments open, how are these guys going to fill the ones that are coming up now? So he said, one of those gentlemen said, accessibility is a reason they want to be there. Accessibility is a reason we chose it as well. We want to be able to get on the expressway to go to work, go shopping, go to the restaurants on Haggerty without dealing with, no matter what time of day. We live there too. He's saying it might be different times of day based on businesses. We're there 24/7. If we have to get out a certain time of day, we want to get out. So that's just how we feel. We'd rather have you think about it as condos or even single-family homes. If you need a tax base, I get it, but go some other route with the ownership instead of apartments where people are going to be coming and going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Colley. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Peters, and I live at 18813 Glengarry Drive as well. My wife was just up here.
Yes.
I received this flyer as well. I wasn't worried about it. I feel that what this is probably all about is somebody without any power
Sir, we'll ask that you just
took a
speak to
copy
us.
of this drawing and wanted to let people in the neighborhood know about it. I don't think there was any malfeasance. I don't think there was any kind of underhanded behavior. I think it was informational. And I appreciated it because some of this may not be accurate, but just the idea that this meeting was happening, I didn't know about that. So I appreciated whoever did this, their effort to let the people who live in the area know about it. I have a number of concerns, and I want to start with some of the things that were talked about a little while ago involving traffic patterns. I heard a lot of we believe, we think, and I see no evidence or proof. How do you prove what direction people that you don't even know about yet are going to move in? How do you know? They're saying they're all going to turn right. Are you kidding me? How do you know a thing like that? I was just amazed, and this is the basis what they're going to go on and try to get planning agreement on this? Do you know what's going to happen if people actually turn left coming out of Victor Parkway in large numbers? And they might. They might have work down 7 Mile. They might have work elsewhere in Livonia. We don't know. You won't know until they move in. I think that's a real problem. This traffic pattern, if they turn left, would be disastrous. Right now, that road between Newburgh and 7 Mile and Victor Parkway and 7 Mile is a pockmarked mess. You can hardly drive on that surface right now. Nobody's cared about it until now to even look at that problem. We've got people patching it, but you practically ruin your car just driving over it now. Getting around during rush hour is a nightmare already. I don't know what, when you add in potentially, they're saying there might be 400 units there, that could be 2 people driving a car. What if there's actually 800 cars there? How do they know that? They don't know. You could have people all over the place with cars and nowhere for them to go. This development is landlocked. There's no green area around it. Where are people going to go? Do they want to walk their dog at night? They want to just go somewhere? Most apartments have somewhere around them that people can go. A park, a development of some kind. There's nothing like that available in the development that I see. It's such a huge development, completely out of scale with everything around it. They didn't go small here. They went about as big as they possibly could. Now, I'm not going to cast aspersions, but it's certainly not what I would call an inauspicious plan. This is not in scale with the community around it. And it's not designed to work with the community around it. If these people have nowhere to go at night, for example, where do we think they're going to go? They're going to walk right down Glengarry and other streets trying to find a nice place to walk or be. Can our community, this small Caliburn Manor community, accommodate an additional 400 to 800 people? I was also interested in their thoughts about when these traffic patterns would happen. How can they predict that these people are all going to be stay-at-home workers? Seriously? You're going to make that assumption to make this work? You're going to affect our lives that way? And you're going to make an assumption based on zero evidence of that? You can't prove that the people who move in there are going to be working at home. They could all be working all over the place. And again, having to turn left at Victor Parkway. Again, affecting all of our lives. And making it dangerous, potentially. My wife mentioned the problem with Glengarry Drive, with no stop signs, only yield signs. People ripping down that street already at 40 miles an hour, with little kids nearly getting hit. I was one of those people, by the way, that was in an accident at Victor Parkway and 7 Mile. Brand new car. It happened right there. I know it's a bad area. It's been a bad area since we moved in almost. It hasn't gotten any better, it's only gotten more congested. These are serious issues, and I think it behooves all of you, looking at all this data, to think about how this is going to affect the existing community.
The folks in the audience, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we do need to proceed with the meeting, so I'd appreciate if you could avoid the peanut gallery comments. That way we can just kind of move smoother.
Let's talk about the appearance of this structure in relation to other buildings around it. If you look at this from any of the angles that I've seen provided online and elsewhere, it is a very large urban-style apartment complex. This is something, when I look at it, it looks like something I'd expect to be built at Woodward and Warren, downtown Detroit, not in this small community. Again, it's a scale issue. It's a behemoth, considering the property around it. An eyesore, maybe not for everybody, but it certainly isn't in scale. And it presents, again, problems from a planning perspective. I guess one last thing I would say is having to do with this whole issue of luxury apartments. I know that's a nice way to sell a project like this. Oh, it's all going to be luxury apartments. But you don't know whether people are going to spend the money you put up. Property is only worth what people will pay for it. And I ask myself, if I was a person with some disposable income like that looking for an apartment to stay in, would I choose of my own will to stay in an apartment that costs me that much that has a view of nothing? I expect something that's going to be expensive to have a nice view of a park if it's a luxury apartment, or a nice view of a beautiful cityscape, or something interesting. This development is going to be overlooking nothing but very pedantic or very average things. It's not a luxury location in my mind. There's nowhere for people there to go. There's no stores or shops immediately nearby. There's a couple of restaurants and soon a new 6-story hotel. But there's not, they'd have to walk a mile to get to a place like Laurel Park and enjoy some kind of shopping. Again, apartment complexes like this, luxury apartments, normally include someplace for the people there to go. Again, I don't see anything in this development. I've heard nothing of it. And I don't think this works, again, with the community and with the people who are going to go there. How are they going to sell these high-ticket apartments with no reason for the people to actually buy in that location? I think that's a very serious problem. If this is okayed and they go ahead and build that, if people don't come and want to pay that money, guess what they'll do? They will lower that rent, and they will have every opportunity to do that. When they do that, they may well fill those apartments, but it won't be with the people that they're saying are going to be coming in here. Again, it could be people who are going to turn left at Victor Parkway. I mean, these are serious things. I'm really not trying to make jokes. I'm actually very concerned about how this could affect this community and what it says about Livonia and its leadership if we don't care about the people who are here already and we don't hear their voices. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Sir? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joe Shavy. My wife, Marilyn, and I live at 19003 Glengarry. We're 3 houses from, so we're the closest of everybody you've heard. We've been in Livonia for 46 years. 46 years ago, we decided Livonia was a place to raise a family because it was noted for having great homes, great schools. And I maintain that is the reason why all these decades that Livonia has perennially rated high in tops or near the top as far as a place to live. And it always revolves around the family, your home, your community, your neighborhood, and the schools. So after our kids grew up and all of that worked out great for us, happily, we decided not to leave Livonia but to move to Glengarry 22 years ago, during which time we have looked over at the empty grass space and wondered, what is the city going to do? We sure hope they don't build businesses and offices. We don't need those. That's kind of a thing of the past now anyway. Look at all the empty businesses. It better be residential, and certainly it is. But we didn't even think it would be apartments, because that is completely contrary to why we moved to Livonia and why we've been there all this time. We think what makes the city strong and attractive to other people to come here is the family aspect. And we all know the motto is families first. It didn't used to be that. It used to be families still first. I don't know why the still was dropped. But it's a very simple, clean, and clear, concise motto. A philosophy for this city is based on families. Now, if you want to change the definition of families to something else, I guess you could justify it. But to me, a family consists of 1 or 2 parents or guardian with kids, and they're raising them to adulthood to be solid citizens, and they're going to go to the schools in order to do that. That's what makes your community strong. So when I saw this was going to be apartments, I don't see where anybody in an apartment is invested in the community. I don't see 1 and 2 bedroom apartments being a source for families in the traditional sense. Yes, call me a traditionalist. I think this panel, this board, is at a crossroads as to what it wants to do for this city in the future. Do we want to keep doing what we've been doing? Put in a subdivision there, which is what we maybe made a false assumption would happen. A single-family subdivision there would knock down the number of units, although you would have more people because there'd be 3, 4 bedrooms with kids. You would increase the population of the city, you would increase the student population, and you would have a property tax base with people who are more than likely to be invested and committed to the city and the community and the neighborhood than people that we've heard talked about. So when I saw that it was going to be 4 stories, well, I was kind of floored. I just thought that was a sore thumb. Everybody has their tastes. We do see, and this was our first, when we thought 265, I think that was a number, of units that we read about. even if they're not, they can't possibly be your standard traditional families, not with one bedrooms primarily, 1 and 2. And if they're gonna have a family, they're probably gonna move out eventually anyway. So we don't really know, and I agree with the comments, we don't really know traffic patterns. We don't really know people coming and going, but we would know, and we could rely on, I think, more firmly if it were a subdivision type development instead of apartments. Vehicles, underground parking, doesn't matter to me if it's underground parking, it's the coming and going that's gonna make a difference. As my next door neighbor pointed out, 7 accidents, I couldn't remember how many. I'll go along with that because I haven't counted. Yes, we've had many accidents there, including motorcycles. We've had a motorcycle death right at Victor Parkway. I've heard 3 accidents from inside my house. I don't see how 400, 200, 300 vehicles who may or may not be turning left or right is going to help. I don't see that being in the best interest of this city. And I'm asking this group to deny the request for rezoning to allow a 4-story structure of this type. I think it's a mistake. I think there's probably places for such, we already heard that. We don't know if they're successful or not, but frankly, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in Livonia and what is going to happen near 275. Haggerty 275, 7 Mile Victor Parkway, Newburgh, that is getting congested all the time. I'm not a traffic expert. I hope you get some of that advice, but I know by the eye test, there's a lot of traffic there and it's getting worse. The potholes are another whole issue, we know that. That'll probably maybe slow people down a little bit. But as far as where we go from here, I would strongly urge you not to allow this type of high-rise residential. Let's keep it homes. That's what makes Livonia great. And if in the future, if this ends up, I'm afraid if somebody asked me, how do you like living in Livonia? I would probably be compelled to say, I used to. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Good evening, Miss.
Hi, my name is Catherine Harris. I live at 37718 Northland. My husband and I have been there for 31 years. I did not intend to speak this evening, as I wrote a letter to all of you, which I believe you received this afternoon.
We did, thank you.
Regarding my concerns. I do, however, want to mention about the flyers. I just want to say very briefly that the person who wrote this, I respect her. She lives, her property will butt right up to this. I live pretty much right across the street from her. And her intention was just to inform people, and that's what we are doing. And I probably left this at your house, sir, because my husband and I passed out several of these, just for that, to let people know who had no idea any of this was happening. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Harris, and we certainly have no problem with the flyers. I think that anything that promotes information to the community is a good thing, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, I live at 18763 Susanna Drive. I live in the Melody Manor subdivision. I've
Can we
been there
get-
for 23 years.
Can we get your name just for the record?
Janet Zangala.
Great, thank you.
I have seen the traffic increase over all those years. My son was one of those people in an accident. His car was totaled. I've had many near misses in that intersection since I have to enter and exit that intersection every day to go anywhere. And when I want to turn left from my subdivision, which is usually where I'm going, it is so difficult to get out. The only way I can get out on a left turn on most hours of the day, except for at night, is to turn at the same time the people who are turning right out of Victor Parkway. so that I can get into a lane. If I want to get onto the freeway, that lane is backed up for me to even get over to go north onto 275. I think that also by having an apartment complex, we're talking about a transient population. I don't think that they're looking for a community. I think it would be just a place for them to stay temporarily. Obviously, if they're only looking to be there for a short term in between jobs or whatever was mentioned. So I think that people that live in this community, in those neighborhoods, have an interest in what is going on there. And so that's why I do oppose this.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Clair. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Good evening, sir.
Hello, Stephen Rooker, 37605 Northland Street, and I am not in favor of this petition. I can echo the sentiments and say all the things that we've heard from everybody else, except for the one gentleman here that was in favor of it. So I agree with my neighbors, I agree with my fellow citizens. I want to touch on the moral compass of our city and the direction that we founded ourselves on and the typical business that we've carried on here. And it's been families first. And I understand that's a wonderful piece of real estate and very attractive developers. And it should be developed into a useful, purposeful thing for the city of Livonia. I can't see how, for the residents and for the city, this is gonna be beneficial as it ties into our family first motto. In fact, I think it'll have an opposite effect. So I'm gonna call on the moral compass of you folks here tonight. Hopefully it doesn't get to the city council, but I think this should be nipped in the bud and eliminated tonight, because morally it goes against the compass and the direction that this community was founded on and has been managed on. And it'd be a shame, I'm 46 years old and I've been a resident of the city of Livonia for 46 years. And it would be a shame if I had to start questioning where I live because we're changing the direction of the community that I was born, raised in, and still support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. And just so you understand that as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, with zoning requests, our recommendation of approval or denial will go forward to city council regardless. That's the process. We just give a recommendation. City council will hear this item. Just wanted to get that out there. Good evening, sir.
Hi, my name is Ron Urso. I live at 37862 Pickford Drive. I've lived in Livonia for 25 years. I came from the city of Dearborn, which was at one time a wonderful family community. I left there when things began to change in that community. And I came to Livonia because, and fortunately, over 25 years, I've raised my kids here. They went to Livonia schools. They've done very well. I like the city. I like what it represents. I'm thankful that someone dropped this because I also was not aware of what was going on. So when I look at this complex, I also agree, I'm not going to reiterate what a lot of people have said. It certainly doesn't fit into the area that it is being placed. I just jotted down a few things of additional items that are going into this area. Okay, we're talking about hotel where docks used to be. We're talking about an apartment complex that's being developed on Haggerty Road at what used to be a Magna facility where I used to work. We have Chick-fil-A going in front of Kohl's on Haggerty Road. On the Schoolcraft property, St. Joe's is putting another medical facility that's going to be there. We have at the current site of 123 Corporation, a new Beaumont facility that is going there. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I understand to be true.
You're correct so far.
Okay, thank you. The U of M facility was only in the last couple of years in Northville. Next to that, there's an auto supplier that's building there. A lot of these places are not open yet. We're talking about traffic problems, and we're looking at 200 units of whatever we're putting in here. The studies, number one, again, the gentleman brought up and they're comparing with facilities in Lansing and Grand Rapids. This is Livonia. It's not Lansing, it's not Grand Rapids. We're not a city like that. We don't desire to live in a city like that, or else that's where we would be. I also would like to understand that all of these complexes that we're talking about and the additional vehicles that are coming in are part of this traffic study that we're talking about. Because the current structure, the way it is, there's no way that it can handle the additional amount of traffic that we're talking about with the 7 or 8 facilities that I just named. I live and I go through the traffic light, through blue skies, across 7 Mile to Victory Parkway. I live a mile from where I work at Trinity Health. And I guarantee you there's not one day, honest to God, not one day that there isn't someone that drives right through a red light at that facility, right at that place. It's a horrible traffic area. It's not gonna get better, not with all of this going on, and the last thing we need is an apartment complex there. There's better things that land could be used for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Urso. Good evening, sir.
Hi, I'm Rick Rondi. I live at 37793 Northland. My property abuts the property in question here. Like many others, I grew up in Livonia. When I started a family, we moved back here and raised 2 children here. So I've been a resident for a long time here. My concern, amongst the others that have already been stated, is a little more specific. I'm not sure what's going to happen to the property values of the houses that are on Northland Street if a 4-story apartment building gets erected pretty much in the backyard. I don't know if there's been any consideration for that, or if anybody's done any studies on that one. We seem to be tossing around a lot of numbers from studies tonight. But if I'm standing in my backyard and I'm looking up at a 4-story apartment building, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be good for the property value. You know, there is a grade change there, but whether I'm looking at the 2nd story or the 3rd story or waving at somebody in the 4th story, it's all pretty much going to be the same for me. You know, we have an in-ground pool. We, invested a lot of money there to make it a nice place. I'm the second lot from the end, so I've already got the concern of a 6-story hotel not too far to the west of me there. And now I'm looking at a 4-story, potentially a 4-story building virtually in my backyard. So I'm obviously not in favor of this. I agree with others that say it's incongruent to the city. Don't see where it even aligns at all with the family first concept. And I would just ask you to reflect, how would you vote if it were your backyard and you were going to be looking at this building every time you walked out your back door? So those are my thoughts. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rondi. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item? If not, we'll go back to the petitioner and see if they would like to speak to anything that they heard so far or give any additional information.
Thank you. Just a couple of clarifying numbers and points. Number one, yeah, it's the number of units proposed are 265, not 400 or 500 or 800, so it's 265. As far as the green space that was questioned or places to go, we do have, if you look at the site plan, and the 100-foot buffer on the north part of the property, we've got designed green and open spaces in that area for the people that live there. So that is incorporated into this plan. And we could further have discussions with this committee and commission later if we needed to enhance that, but that is part of it. And then just speaking as far as, again, going back to the word luxury and what we meant by that, the luxury word, it was a word meaning having a choice of where you want to live, not necessarily in what style and what people like and in what things cost. It's more of having a choice. And some people just, there's a lot of question on speculation of traffic patterns and what things look like and what people like and what people don't like. There are people who pay a premium to have location and accessibility, as a lot of these people have probably to live where they live, versus what they're looking at or how certain things are built inside their space. Truly, this development will have a lot of amenities as part of it, but I just want to point out that some people, and there are plenty of buildings like this across the country, where people pay to live in a certain location because of its proximity. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be part of the community or not want to be part of the community. It's just a different style of living and a different form of meeting a demand. John, I think you probably have a couple points you want to talk about too.
Yeah, just to clarify on some of the parking discussion, the ratios are, for a typical building, about 1.5 cars to 1.7 cars per unit. There's a lot of speculation that in the coming years, that number with autonomous vehicles is going to be significantly less, so this building is actually designed to be able to convert.
Please give him an opportunity to speak.
Coincidentally, the question was, well, where are these jobs? Where are these people coming from? Well, ironically, the American Center for Mobility, which is one of the top 4 facilities in the country, is located at Willow Run with a huge federal grant. You've got Masco, you've got all these other businesses that people describe. This is one of the reasons why we want to be here. And we do have some experience in the area. We are building a 260-unit building, very comparable to this, at Grand River and Novi Road in Novi. And a couple other buildings are scheduled as well. So we've been through the experience a little bit with the traffic, the discussion, the parking decks. So I think it's important to understand that we've got a lot of experience with this. So of the 265 units, I think we're planning roughly 360 parking spaces or 390 parking spaces, I believe, with the deck, of which we feel probably 340 to 350 will be utilized at some point during the week, and then there's accommodations for guest parking. But the old 2-to-1 ratio that has supported suburban development for the years in typical garden level apartments really is not the norm anymore. I mean, this is really, quite frankly, the new norm. And the architect that designed this building did 120 of these last year, throughout the United States. So they're the #1 architect in the country for this particular type of product. And we've invested a lot of time and effort to go with the roughly $1 billion portfolio we already own and manage. So we feel pretty confident that we understand the dynamics of owning this, designing this, building it, and supporting it. And I guess one final comment is I can certainly be empathetic to the family situation, and that was one of the reasons we thought this might be a better fit in this particular location, because it was closer to the highway, the accessibility was there. And I guess the only challenge I would have to those is, family isn't necessarily defined by mother, father, child, multiple child. I mean, I would challenge that probably everybody in this room at some point didn't have kids when they were younger, and if they spent their entire life in Livonia at some point, they may have considered themselves a family without, having a house full of children. And I don't see how that's any different here. I mean, a building like this is, to some extent, a gateway into Livonia. It's coming off of 275, heading east. It's an important statement for your community. Forget the fact that it's in an office park that's got a couple million square feet already, but it's a prominent statement as people enter your community. So when we designed the building, we really felt it was important not just to design a big square building. So it doesn't show here, and I understand why this is a rezoning meeting. This isn't a site plan review, but the building has got a lot of dimensional appeal to it from the streetscape. It's brick, it's masonry, it's got glass in it. It's what I'll call a toned down urban. We didn't think taking a building that was pure urban and putting it in this environment, even though it's supported by what I'll call kind of a higher tech office environment. We tried to make it feel a little bit more warmer with the faux wood on the corners. We elevated the rear of the smaller building that gives somewhat of a transition from the back of the homes that are roughly 329 to 500 feet away. So I understand that they're going to be looking into the building and they might be looking up a story or two, but it's still 300 to 500 feet depending on where you're at. And it's a building that we fenestrated and elevated to soften it up, and we do feel it's a more appealing alternative than an ambulatory care facility with tons of asphalt and parking lot lights that are on 24/7 and ambulances that are ingressing and egressing. And I realize that's no longer the option, but you know, and that's the other reason why it's wrapped around the parking deck. You know, the idea was to bury the parking as opposed to create a building and park around it, so you're looking at acres and acres of asphalt and striping and lights, and to create, you know, elevation that's got some warmth to it and it's got some feel to it. And I guess one of my other final comments would be, as far as the viability of the project, I know you're not here necessarily to evaluate that, but I want you to understand, you know, that we think we are a good partner to Etkin, and we're always a good partner, and we're invested in the communities that we're a part of and that we build properties in. But residential has a much lower failure rate than office building. So with all due respect, I mean, Etkin is one of the best in metropolitan Detroit, and they do an excellent job. But when you look at true value over the long haul, office doesn't really compare to what I'll call a luxury market rate property. There's a big disparity there, and I feel qualified to say that because we own 1 million square feet of office and retail space as well. That's why we don't own any more of it, and we're not buying more of it. And that's why we're focused more on this type of a product, because the demand is there, the jobs are being created. The I-275, I-96 corridors are two of the last undeveloped corridors in metropolitan Detroit. So it's no guess or it's no surprise why Cooper Tire and Beaumont, and I think 2 Beaumont offices between Farmington downtown and the old A123 site, are developed along this corridor. And I think you're going to continue to see it south. There's more land down that way, and there are many of us as developers looking at that corridor as it continues to go down into the metropolitan airport. And you've got a tremendous amount of investment around the airport by out-of-town, you know, private equity that's gobbling up hundreds of acres at a time around the airport. So this corridor is going to continue to be a popular corridor and what I'll call a bustling corridor. So I understand, and my hat's off to you. It's a tough challenge balancing all of this, and we understand it, and we appreciate the time. We understand the concerns from the community, and you know, we do think it's a good, viable project that hits the demand in what's going on today in housing. It's something we think that's very important and worth considering from your perspective as the leaders of the community, you know, to look at what's going on in housing and kind of what I'll call the transformation of housing, no different than what we've seen in the auto industry and some other industries and things that are going on around us. So thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Probably it'd be a better question for Etkin, but can you speak just briefly about the history of this property in terms of the fact that we've originally started as a medical office facility through a consent judgment, but you looked at this as an office property as well, and how did you end up at this particular use of R8 and apartment versus medical or R&D office space?
Yeah, you know, we bought the property several years ago, and initially we had a 54,000 square foot office building designed and approved through the city, and at the time we thought that was something that was going to be in demand, which it turned out being in demand. But the hard part with office buildings then and now are proving out two things. Number one, cost, and number two, timing to get the product to market. When you build an office building, you don't have the luxury of the ramp up that you might have with residential, to where you can get to an occupancy rate that's stabilized. So when we held it for several years, which we've come back in front of this body to get you know, extensions on, we continued to market it. It's not like we stopped. But the market just didn't bear out. There were a couple of things that were close, but just didn't work. And then a few years ago, when we started to look at other avenues or other types of developments for the property, one of the things that always was called upon, I field calls every day still, is more retail. Corner, Starbucks, a bank branch, you know, some sort of fast food, fast casual thing. When we've talked about that before, that's not something that was, you know, talked about with master plan, but also with what that area of the city was trying to achieve. But we were asked to look at any other options and bring any other viable options in front of Planning Commission and City Council. When we looked at the multifamily, we really thought that two things were apparent. Number one, we believe that the demand is there. We believe the demand is there because of what's happening in your community, but what's happening also in surrounding communities. And by locationally being in the center of a lot of the jobs that are being created today in Metro Detroit, we feel it's a very viable demand generator for a lot of people and where they can choose to live. If we don't build it here, someone's going to build it in Plymouth. Someone's going to build it in Northville. Someone's going to build it somewhere else. This type of development does not necessarily exist in Metro Detroit other than downtown. You can say Royal Oak, but not really. And so just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean that it's not something that people want. The other issue, or the other reason that we looked at it and we thought that it was the right thing to do at this time was the fact that the market for residential is clearly changing. There's vast majority of reports, and we'd be happy to share the ones with the people that live in close proximity that we've shared with council and with your board, where things are changing dynamically in the United States as far as home ownership. Home ownership's going down, rentals going up. Home prices are escalated to values that are growing at rates that are much higher than the rental rate growth. And people in different categories of their life are wanting to live in the same type of community for the first time in a long time. It doesn't mean that there won't be families. It doesn't mean that there won't be empty nesters. It doesn't mean that there won't be business people or not. It just means that people are looking for different avenues and different opportunities to live. And for those reasons, we've talked to DTN for the last 2 years. We've went through various planning modules for this site plan, and we've come up with what we believe to be a responsible design for the two parcels. We've kept a buffer. We've added green space. We've talked to multiple industry leaders on what people like and what they would tend to want to have as an amenity. We've incorporated that into the project as well. I don't doubt and I don't discount at all what everybody has said about the traffic. That's something that we cannot change. Detroit's a motor city for a reason. People drive. And you're right, we can't sit here and predict that everybody's going to take a left or everybody's going to take a right. We can just tell you by virtue of how we've designed the site where it would be intended for people to pull out of this community and where it'd be intended for them to pull in. Short of that, there is a lot of speculation to it, and I can't sit here and tell you we can be 100% accurate on what we're predicting, but we think we're pretty close given the expertise and the portfolios that we both manage and have developed over time.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there any other questions of the petitioner from the commission? Mr. Ventura?
Mr. Sardini, one of the folks that spoke, and I've lost track of who asked this question, but said how, you could end up with two families living in a unit. Is there a way to prevent that? I mean, how would you know that that was happening? Is that permitted? I mean...
I believe DTN has policies for that, and I'll let John speak to it.
Yeah, we don't, from a rental standpoint, we don't allow two unrelated groups to rent. I can't say that we really haven't had the issue. And also to speak to the number, I believe on this particular community, we only have maybe 15 or so 3-bedrooms, and they're going to be priced around $3,000 a month. So those will really be more of, and we've got other projects like this where you're going to have probably people in there that are transitioning in jobs that have housing allowances, or we have had cases, and somebody else brought it up here earlier, where we've got folks that have moved out of a house and they've got a unit in Michigan, and they've got a unit. We've got one guy that's got a unit in Traverse City, a unit in Lansing, and then owns a condo down in Florida. So that is not unusual from a maintenance standpoint from seniors that don't want to deal with even condo fees and maintenance. So it's a really broad spectrum, but to say that we've got families grouped in, splitting a $3,000 a month rent really doesn't happen in these properties.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Ventura. Any other questions for our petitioner? Ms. Smiley?
Just actually for Mr. Toromino, what is the approximate percentage of green space on this property?
We have not calculated that out yet, so.
But there is a 100-foot buffer between the homes and the building, right? Is that
The consent judgment does provide for what is a 100-foot buffer. That is being respected in this case to the extent that there would be no building construction within that 100-foot zone. They are showing some walking paths as well as a potential dog park and other kind of passive recreational amenities. The building itself would appear to, again, respect that 100-foot setback. It may even be a little further than 100 feet from the north property line.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And once we get to the site,
Thanks, yeah.
site planning phase of this, we would look at the percentage of green space and hammer out the details of exactly landscaping details and so on. Correct, Mr. Toromino?
Correct.
All right. Any other questions for our planning staff or for the petitioner? If not, I will close the public hearing, and a motion is in order.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to make an approving resolution.
Mrs. Smiley, go ahead.
The request to rezone the property at 37640 7 Mile Road and the part of the property at 19290 Victor Parkway from RUF to R8 is hereby approved subject to the City Council approval for the following reasons: that the proposed change of zoning is compatible to and in harmony with the surrounding land uses and the zoning districts in the area, that the proposed change of zoning is consistent with the developing character of the area, and that the proposed change of zoning would provide for the development of the subject property in a manner that is appropriate with its size and location, and that the proposed change of zoning, along with amendments to the consent judgment and open space preservation agreement, would permit the development of a multifamily residential apartment complex that will help support an expected increase in employment in the northwest part of the community.
Is there support?
Support.
I will go with Mrs. McHugh on that. We have a motion to approve the rezoning request by Mrs. Smiley, supported by Mrs. McHugh. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, if the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mrs. Smiley.
Aye.
Mrs. McHugh.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
No.
Mr. Ventura.
Aye.
Carl Magno votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye. Motion passes. We'll go to City Council with an approving recommendation. And again, I suggest to the audience members who are interested in following this to please watch for the City Council meeting and also attend that if you're continue to be interested. Thank you. We'll give just a moment for the audience to clear out, and then we'll go on to item number 2. Everyone's being nice and quiet, so I think we can go ahead and start with number 2.
Petition 2019-04-02-07, submitted by Ocean Wellness LLC, requesting waiver use approval pursuant to Section 11.03U of the City of Livonia zoning ordinance number 543, as amended, to operate a massage establishment at 16345 Middlebelt Road, located on the west side of Middlebelt Road between Puritan and 6 Mile Road in the northeast section, a quarter of Section 14.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Toromino.
Thank you. Again, this is a request to operate a massage establishment within a multi-tenant building located on the west side of Middlebelt Road between Puritan and 6 Mile Roads. This property is a little less than an acre in size. It has 200 feet of frontage on the main road, which is Middlebelt, and then an additional 200 feet of road frontage on Greenland, which is to the south of the property. The site is split zone, meaning that it has two zoning categories. The southerly 130 feet of the property is Zone C2, general business, while the north 70 feet of the property is Zone C1, local business. There is a multi-tenant building located on the property. It has a gross floor area of about 9,120 square feet. All of the retail units in this case face east towards Middle Belt Road. As you can see, most of the parking on the site is in the front yard between the building and the road, Middle Belt Road, that is. The unit that Ocean Wellness Spa would occupy is located within the C2 zone part of the site. There are a couple of special requirements that apply to massage establishments. Section 11.03 2 requires that no massage establishment shall be located within 400 feet of another massage establishment. There are no other massage establishments within 400 feet of this property, so that provision is being met. Second, 11.03U3 requires that no massage establishment can be located within 400 feet of a school, a place of worship, state licensed daycare facility, library, or playground, or public park. Again, there are none of these are located within 400 feet, so the proposal is in compliance with that particular provision as well. The unit itself is about 1,400 square feet. It's a 20-foot by 70-foot space. There is a plan submitted with the application that shows the layout of the unit. It shows individual private massage cubicles. There would be obviously restroom. There's a staff lounge as well as a front reception area. No modifications are being proposed to the exterior of the building. They would be allowed one wall sign measuring 20 square feet, and parking for the plaza is sufficient. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I can read out the correspondence.
Yes, please.
We have a letter from the Engineering Division dated May 3rd that reads, the existing parcel is assigned the range of addresses from 16329 through 16349 Middle Belt Road, with the address of 16345 Middle Belt being assigned to the overall parcel. The legal description provided with this petition appears to be correct and should be used with the subject petition. The existing building is currently serviced by public sanitary, storm, and water main. The information submitted does not indicate any new connections to the existing utility services, so it appears that there will not be any additional impacts to the existing systems at this time. Should alterations to the existing services be required, the owner will need to provide plans to this department to determine if permits will be required. Should the owner do any work within the Middle Belt Road right-of-way, they will need to contact the Wayne County Department of Public Services for any permits that may be required. That letter is signed by David Lear, Assistant City Engineer. Then we have several letters, all letters of no objection, coming from the department. That includes Livonia Fire and Rescue. That's a letter dated May 8th and signed by Keith Bowe, Fire Marshal. Letter of no objection from the Division of Police dated May 3rd and signed by Brian Lee, Sergeant of the Traffic Bureau. Similar letter coming from the Inspection Department dated May 22nd, signed by Jerome Hanna, Director of Inspection. Letter from our Finance Department dated May 3rd and signed by Colleen Coleman, Chief Accountant. And lastly, letter from the Office of the Treasurer indicating that there are no taxes due on the property, and that is signed by Linda Shield, Treasurer of the City of Livonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tormina. Do we have any questions for our planning staff? Don't see any. Is the petitioner here? Ask that you please come forward. And again, we'll just ask for your name and address, please.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Haiyan Pai. And
Good evening. And what's your address?
my address is 3775 Colonial Drive, Westland, Michigan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And what would you like to tell us about your business that you would like to put there?
Kind of, I have 6 years the business ownership in the family house. We're doing great business, and right now I'm ready to do my own business because I'm willing to sell my part of business to my partnership. So I live in the Livonia for 7 years, so I really like Livonia City, and my son graduated from Livonia City, so and this close home, that's why I think I'm really willing to do business in Livonia.
Okay, thank you. And where's your current business located?
On the Orchard Lake Road, between 12-13 mile, there 29218, and Orchard Lake Road, Farmington Hills.
Okay, and you said that you are a partner in that
Yes.
current business? Okay, all right, thank you. Is there any questions for our petitioner? Mrs. Smiley?
Yes, you said you've been in this business for a while with a partner,
Yes,
but you live in Livonia and you want to break off from that partnership and start your own business here.
yes,
So, and how long have you been doing this?
8 years,
A year?
yes.
Okay.
8 years.
8 years, oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. I have a hearing problem. Okay, okay. Will you be in the business by yourself, or do you have a partner or anyone helping you here?
Livonia one is, will be by myself.
Well,
Farmington one is have partner,
okay, you're gonna have people working for you, though?
yes.
You're not gonna do everything yourself, right?
Actually, I work for myself too.
So you'll be alone?
No, I will hire people working, but also I'm a worker also.
Oh, so you're gonna work and
Yes.
run the business, but you'll
Yes.
also have other
Yes.
therapists, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smiley. Ms. McHugh?
Could you just tell us where you get most of your clients from? Do you have referral sources? Are they repeat? What-
Actually, we do on the Google. People can Google us and find the place. Also, they just walk in and some of my clients know me for many years. They will follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McHugh. Any other questions for our petitioner? Mr. Ventura?
Ms. Pye, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Your application says you're going to do therapeutic massage.
Yes.
Do you have a certification to do that? Do you have a license to do that?
Yes, I do.
And what kind of therapeutic massage do you do?
Actually, we do most of the acupressure, and we do Swedish and deep tissue.
What kind of problems do people have that they would come to you and?
The most of the back and the neck problem.
And are these muscle problems or skeletal problems or?
Excuse me?
I'm not asking my question well, but is this something that can be fixed with a massage, or is this just part of another therapy?
Yes, I believe we do. I do like every day almost.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura. Mr. Long?
Thank you. The individual rooms, they have existing walls, or you're gonna have walls built? Do they go all the way up to the ceiling?
Build a wall myself because the empty space right now.
Okay, and then there's doors that'll close, so if I'm getting a massage in there, are the rooms, if it's private, the room is closed, is that correct?
Oh, yes, correct.
Okay. And you have 4 rooms, so do you plan to have 4 massage therapists working?
Yes, we have 3 single room and 1 double room for the couple.
Okay, so a couple could come in.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any other questions for the petitioner? Seeing no other questions, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item? I don't see anybody coming forward. Ms. Pye, is there anything else that you would like to let us know before we make our decision?
I think I will do great business. It's my business kind of helping people. Lots of people come to us after that, they'll come back because, it's our time their back hurts, like always neck hurts. So we help lots of people, I believe. So I hope I get proved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pye. We always like to give you the last word, so thank you. With no other comments, I think we can close the public hearing at this time, and a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. McHugh.
I'd like to offer a denying resolution that the request to operate a massage establishment at 16345 Middle Belt Road is denied for the following reasons. that the petitioner has failed to affirmatively show that the proposed use complies with all the special and general waiver use standards and requirements as set forth in sections 11.03 and 19.06 of the zoning ordinance number 543. That the petitioner has not adequately established that there is a need for the proposed use in the shopping center. The petitioner has not sufficiently demonstrated that the proposed use will be compatible to and in harmony with the surrounding uses in the area, and that the proposed use is in contrary to the goals and objectives of the zoning ordinance, which, among other things, are intended to ensure suitability and appropriateness of uses.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to deny by Mrs. McHugh, supported by Mr. Ventura. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, if the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mrs. McHugh.
Aye.
Mr. Ventura.
Aye.
Mrs. Smiley.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Chair Magna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes no. And the motion to deny passes, and there will be, is it, you have to excuse me, my brain isn't working too well. 10 days? Ms. Pye, you have 10 days in which to appeal our decision in writing to the city council. So it's your path if you would like to take that.
Okay.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we will go on to the miscellaneous section of our agenda, item number 3.
Petition 2019-01-08-01, submitted by 18th Street Development LLC, requesting approval of all plans required by 18.4 sections 18.47 and 18.58 of the City of Livonia zoning ordinance number 543 as amended in connection with a proposal to construct a professional medical office building at 39,000 7 Mile Road, located on the north side of 7 Mile Road between the I-275-96 Expressway and Haggerty Road in the southwest quarter of Section 6.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tormina?
Thank you. This is a revision to a previously approved plan to build a professional medical office building located on the north side of 7 Mile Road between Haggerty Road and the I-275, I-96 Expressway. This property is 35 acres in area, and it was on February 25th of this year that the site was rezoned from M1 light manufacturing to the PO1 high-rise professional office, maximum 6 stories. The site contains, as you can see from this aerial photograph, a building that is roughly 290,000 square feet in size. It's presently occupied by A123 battery systems. Directly to the north of the property is an oil well that is operated by West Bay Oil Exploration. To the west is the Pentagon Center Entertainment Campus, Zone C2. Across 7 Mile is the 7 Mile Road Crossing office complex, as well as Andiamo Restaurant and Schoolcraft College. Again, on February 25th of this year, council granted site plan approval for a 4.5-story office building that would have been located at the north end of the property. And under that original plan, the existing office and industrial building would remain as part of the overall redevelopment of the site, and that building was to be used primarily as a warehouse. The reason this item is back before the Planning Commission is because the petitioner, 18th Street Development, and the main tenant, Beaumont Health, have made substantial changes. The new plan is for a slightly smaller 4-story building, and it would be built near the center of the site, replacing the existing office and industrial building that would be demolished in its entirety. The north end of the property where the building was previously shown will be left vacant and retained by the owners for future possible development. The ground floor area of the new building is approximately 134,000 square feet. The original building was 160,000 square feet. The building, as you can see, is positioned in what is currently the main parking lot that lies just east of the existing A123 office building. At the closest point, the building is roughly 105 feet from the I-275 off-ramp. Customer and employee parking, for the most part, would be located on the west and the south sides of the building. This is where the non-emergency entry points to the building would be located. And then the emergency drop-off would be located on the east side of the building, with additional parking located on the north side. There are other building support and ancillary services that are located on the north and the east sides of the building. This includes the shipping and receiving areas or receiving area. There's a yard area designated for the ground-mounted mechanical equipment. There's a mobile MRI unit that would be stationed there, as well as the development's trash containment area. These elements would all be screened using both masonry walls as well as landscaping. You can also see from this site plan that the loop road would continue on the site. This loop road would parallel the expressway on the east side of the property, as well as continue on the north and south sides, where it would connect and provide access to both 7 Mile and Haggerty roads. The road does bisect the northerly part of the historic Orson Everett property, where it would connect to the access road that runs through the Pentagon Center Entertainment Campus and also ties into 7 Mile at the signalized intersection, which is located directly across from Sauk Drive at Schoolcraft College. So this would have access to the signal from what is shown on this plan as Chippewa Street at 7 Mile Road. There would be 281 parking spaces, 281 parking spaces are required to support the medical part of this development. Another 346 spaces are needed to support the physician office or general office use, and then 12 for building support and amenities. So overall, the amount of parking that is required by code is 639 parking spaces. The site plan shows 568 parking spaces, resulting in a deficiency of 71 spaces. However, the petitioner does believe that the parking that is needed to support the use is roughly 560 spaces. But because the provided parking is less than what's required by code, this is an item that will have to be reviewed and approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's a fully detailed landscape plan that was provided with the application. It shows landscaping throughout the site as well as around the new road. Site lighting would be limited to a height of 20 feet. Much of these items are similar to the site plan that was previously approved. The one item that you did not review in detail previously was the design of the building, and again, once again, I'm going to have the issue of not being able to show you. We do have new renderings, and if we wait a minute, it'll provide a much better, give you a much better understanding of what the building will look like. Essentially, it will contain a combination of brick and metal panels throughout the building design. There are louvered screen wells on the top portion of the building that would screen the mechanical equipment. Overall, the height of the building is roughly 67.5 feet, and we have the architect here this evening with, as was recommended, building samples or material sample boards, as well as the renderings that, unfortunately, I'm having trouble showing you right now on the screen. But with that, we do have some new items of correspondence, Mr. Chairman, so I should read those out.
Yeah, let's read out correspondence, and if the pictures load, we'll flip back to those.
Thank you. A letter dated May 9th from our engineering division. It says, in accordance with your request, the engineering division has reviewed the above referenced petition. We have no objections to the proposed project at this time. The existing parcel is assigned the address of 39,000 7 Mile Road. The legal description provided with the petition appears to be correct and should be used in conjunction with this petition. The existing site is currently serviced by public sanitary and water main that can be extended to the proposed building. Storm sewer detention will need to be provided for any new impervious areas. The submitted drawings do not indicate any proposed utility extensions, so we will review those items when full engineering drawings are submitted to this department. The owners have been in contact with this department and aware of the utility requirements for the proposed development. The proposed paving improvements shown on the submitted drawings indicate the new road will tie into the existing exit from the Pentagon Center Entertainment development. Prior to any construction, the owner will need to provide access agreements from the other property owners or revise the proposed roadway to use their existing approach. If the new layout is approved, the owner will be required to remove the two existing approaches from 7 Mile Road and replace any missing or damaged sidewalk along the frontage. Any work within the 7 Mile Road right-of-way will require a permit from Wayne County Department of Public Services. Also, right-of-way permits may be required from the Michigan Department of Transportation, depending on the access and grading required to install the proposed walls and landscaping. Next is a letter from the Livonia Fire and Rescue Division dated May 9th, and it reads, "We have no objections to this proposal with the following stipulations. Subject buildings are to be provided with an automatic sprinkler system, and on-site hydrants shall be located between 50 feet and 100 feet from the fire department connection. Adequate hydrants shall be provided and located with spacing consistent with the use group. A fire access road shall be provided with not less than 20 feet of unobstructed width and have a minimum of 13 feet 6 inches of vertical clearance. Fire lanes shall be marked with wall or pole-mounted signs that have the words 'fire lane, no parking' painted on both sides for pole mount or single-sided for wall mount in contrasting colors at a size and spacing approved by the authority having jurisdiction. Number 5, fire department access shall be maintained in accordance with Chapter 18, Fire Department Access and Water Supply. 6, commercial kitchen hood and duct fire suppression shall be a UL 300 system. And 8, CO2 detection required for beverage distribution systems and coolers if installed, if tanks are 100 pounds or greater." And that letter is signed by Keith Bowe. Fire Marshal, we have a letter of no objection coming from the Division of Police dated May 15th and signed by Brian Lee, Sergeant of the Traffic Bureau. Next is a letter from the Inspection Department dated May 22nd that reads, "Pursuant to your request, the above referenced petition has been reviewed and the following is noted. Number 1, a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals would be required for the deficient number of parking spaces. And 2, signage has not been reviewed. Signage must conform to the sign ordinance or obtain a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. This department has no further objections to this petition." That letter is signed by Jerome Hanna, Director of Inspection. Next is a letter of no objection coming from the Department of Finance and signed by Colleen Coleman, Chief Accountant. And lastly, a letter dated May 8th from the Office of the Treasurer indicating that they have no objections at this time, and that is signed by Linda Shield, Treasurer of the City of Livonia. Still no graphics, sorry.
I don't, do you have pictures?
Thank you,
Well, the applicant has the red ones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tormina. We do have the pictures of the renderings that Mr. Tormina is trying to bring up on his computer in front of us, and I'm sure our very capable Livonia television staff will be able to zoom in on those pictures at some point during the presentation to make sure that our TV audience gets to see those as well. So with that, I'll let our petitioner come forward and speak to this item. And they may even want to talk about these renderings and material samples that they have here. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you all?
Welcome back.
Thank you. Tom Kelly, 1621 18th Street, Denver, Colorado. Thank you, Commissioners. Once again, appreciate your time to revisit this with us. As we mentioned in the study session, when we really looked at the prior site plan that was previously approved, there was an intended purpose for the warehouse that when push came to shove, it wasn't the highest and best use for the site, and there were opportunities to be able to utilize for Beaumont those needs elsewhere and really just focus on what the best long-term viability is for the site. And so what we have in front of you is very similar. 4.5 per 1,000 parking stalls is what we previously proposed. The building's shrunk, so the parking's reduced. But in our experience in developing these facilities around the country, that is sufficient. That's what we're able to function with and not have a plethora of empty parking stalls. In addition to this, we now have a site plan that has the building a little bit more centrally located. The loop road remains unchanged from what you previously saw. We're working with the Pentagon Association, and we're working with the Historic Preservation Commission to find amicable solutions to be able to achieve this. And we know that the site plan is conditioned upon our ability to do this. In addition to the site plan, proud to be able to present, first and foremost, our partner on this project, Beaumont. And the prototype of what you see is what we're working with Beaumont on to develop, not just here, but in other locations in Michigan, a new prototype for an outpatient care facility. They're all built in a way that is going to have a certain Beaumont brand and feel to it, but is also going to be able to attract independent physicians. So the intent of this is to have full comprehensive outpatient care under one roof, where Beaumont provides higher acuity, more hospital-based care, and the independent physicians have an opportunity to come in and complement those services. So it's a well-rounded healthcare network all under one roof for the community of Livonia and some of the adjacent surrounding communities. Now that the renderings are pulled up, the overall feel and the look of this is going to be a four-story, more of a modern windows, glass, and then brick, metal facade. Our architect, Kendall Ruberg from HKS, is here to be able to speak a little bit more with a little more acuity when it comes to the architectural elements. But Kendall, if you don't mind, as we go through these slides, elaborating on these, and I believe we have them in a way that we can kind of give you a rotation around the building and orient you as we do so.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Would you like me to rearrange these so they can be
So they
shown
Actually-
differently?
Actually, they have them on camera right now, so.
came up.
No, they're okay.
I saw what I pictured as a separate piece, maybe help that.
Okay, great. That way, as you speak to the pieces, I'm sure they'll be able to get those on the screen.
Absolutely. The materials that are proposed, as Tom had indicated, predominance of brick, glass, and metal panel accents in terms of the sensibility of the detailing of the true architecture of the entire facade. The metal panel, which is shown in these renderings to be kind of a steel gray color, it's represented on the board below. We've got two other metal materials that we're proposing. They're really to be around the window frames, whether it's the high story volume of the glass, which we're referring to as the lanterns in this design, are really the lighter color of the metal and the clear glass. And then the punched windows, we're proposing a darker frosted color tone to the glass, and that'll have a different color of the aluminum frame for that. The blue accent is, as Tom mentioned, following the prototypical brand image. We want to bring in some of the blue architecturally into the facility for that recognition of that brand. The brick is a gray with a gray mortar to give a real modern sensibility. The different coursing that we're proposing also, if you pick up on the verticals in that facade, we're also turning the coursing slightly. And then on one of the facades, which you've probably noticed in the actual submission that we provided you, there is a section that is facing the parking area, which has a combination of the punched window and strip window. And we're proposing that in that stripped window area, to provide some relief to that facade in its full dimension, would be every other coursing as you move vertical across the building. A horizontal expression of that brick would be pushed forward slightly to give a shade shadow appearance, and it actually will make that brick of all uniform color actually appear differently because of the shade and shadow in that tone. A little bit of architectural detailing to provide some interest on that side.
Oh, architectural trickery, huh?
Trickery.
Very good.
That is in a sense what's proposed for you in the architecture of the building. I can answer any questions that you might have specific to the architectural character of the materials, if you'd like.
Yeah, well, while you're here, is there any questions about the architecture of this building? Doesn't look like it. So thank you for giving that presentation.
Thank you. For the record, I don't think I gave my name, but Kendall Ruberg with HKS, 125 West Main Street in Northville, Michigan.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll make sure your comments are attributed to your name. And Mr. Kelly, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, just appreciate the opportunity once again, and here to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you for coming, and we'll look to see if there's any questions from the commission. We have Mr. Ventura, and then
I'll defer to Ms. Smiley.
okay, we'll go over to the ladies.
I
Ms.
was
Smiley.
my question was about the signage. Is it gonna say like Beaumont up on the blue? Is that the plan, or?
We are working with Little Fish sign design company that Beaumont has a long relationship with to explore signage opportunities for the building facades. So that will be presented as a separate package, but it has not been finalized, and we're working through that right now.
In your buildings, does Beaumont have something like this somewhere else? I know you're doing a lot of building at Beaumont, but.
This is the first of this new initiative for Beaumont, an outpatient care center, where Beaumont has been more hospital-based in the past. With the changing in healthcare and moving more to an outpatient billing rate, as we all are paying a much higher deductible and paying more premiums for our insurance, the outpatient care is designed to be able to treat 90+% of medical cases and do it in a much more economical way. So we are doing this initiative with Beaumont. Couldn't be happier to be doing this and be able to provide the highest quality health care, but at a much lower rate than what you would typically receive on campus at a Beaumont hospital. So there's this one, there's another one up in the northeastern suburbs of Michigan that we're working towards, and there could be more down the road, but these are the first prototypes of this new type of facility.
So this will have an emergency room?
It'll have an emergency room, it'll have a
Outpatient surgeries?
It will have a surgery center, it'll have a lab, full comprehensive imaging. There'll be pharmacy operated by Beaumont. There's going to be infusion therapy within the facility, and then quite a bit of both specialty and primary care. So everything from moms and kids is a big focus for this, and focusing family health care within this facility. So everything that you could think of from an outpatient care perspective, primary care to specialty care, is what's envisioned in this. In addition to more of those, what you mentioned, the more hospital-based services.
Very good. And now will you also have doctors' offices in here?
Yes, it will be approximately half of the building will be Beaumont, and the other half will be private physicians. So there'll be everything from primary care, OBGYN, possibly even a dentist. So it will be a mixed tenancy of within the building. We're going to own the building as the developer. Beaumont's going to lease 50% of the building. Beaumont owns the land. We're going to do a long-term ground lease just to help kind of paint the picture of the arrangement. So it's a long-term structure, and it will be full of independent physicians. Half of the building will be.
When you say independent, they're not Beaumont doctors, they're independent physicians that also have privileges at Beaumont?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Smiley. Other questions for our petitioner? Mr. Ventura?
At our study meeting, we had a long discussion about how you were doing with the Historical Commission and your ability to move the road access from from Chippewa
Yes.
north, and to get through the parking lot adjacent to the theater. What kind of progress are you making on that?
We have a June 11th meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission, a vote that would be coming up. So we're working right now on, we have a memorandum of understanding that has gone back and forth, and we're working through an updated version of that to be able to present to them based on some of the feedback that we received from our last meeting with them.
But that's talking about having the road where it's located on your site plan here tonight.
Yes, sir.
We also discussed getting the road further north and working with the property owner up there. Are you having any luck accomplishing that?
No, we have not had anything that's been definitive. We've been exploring every option, but no, we have not been successful to date in any alternatives.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura. Any other questions for our petitioner? Mr. Long?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just real quick, once you get all the approval, assuming you get the approvals, what's your construction timetable? When do you think this facility will be open?
We're looking to break ground this year and then be open as soon as the fourth quarter of 2020 to see some patients. Not the full building will probably not be fully open by the end of 2020, but bleeding into the first quarter of 2021 as we do some of the build-outs with some of the independent physicians.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Bonjero.
at our study meeting, I think you were gonna talk about the traffic, possibly do like a traffic study.
Yes, we've had numerous traffic studies. We're in the process now of updating it because before we had a larger building with the existing facility still in operation as a warehouse. So that resulted in more trips than what's currently there. So now we're updating the traffic study to eliminate the existing facility with our smaller building. So the traffic's only going to get better than from what we previously presented, but I don't have that latest and greatest yet.
Just my concern was on that loop road where it comes out behind the historic building,
Yes.
where it connects to Chippewa Street. I was out there today at 5.
Yep.
It was a bear. I was trying to get on to 7 Mile, and it is really tight right there.
Right.
So I don't know if those 3 lanes, looks like it might help, so you could go north instead of feeding everybody to the south, going towards 7 Mile. I don't know how you'd make it work, because I couldn't get out of there today.
Well,
It was bad.
it is, and the prior traffic study we had opined on that, and the recommendation was there needs to be timing adjustments to all of the signalized intersections in that area, and that's part of what we're proposing for our development is to take that on, and so the updated traffic study, again, it's only going to get better than what we previously had, but yes, that traffic signalization, the sequencing of it needs to be adjusted, and certainly during peak movie times as well. Even after hours from your typical rush hour traffic, there's buildups there.
And just one last, where the loop road connects to Chippewa, between the historic house and Chippewa, it's super low in there. So I don't know,
Yes.
there's gonna be a lot of fill, and I know you guys were concerned about retaining walls and stuff.
Right.
I don't see how you're gonna be able to get around it, or if you can grade it out, but there's gonna be a lot of fill needed to bring that road up to Chippewa.
Yep.
Because when I was standing down there, at the bottom of it, there's probably at least a 6 to 7 foot height difference from 7 Mile to where I was standing. And so that road, you're gonna need to bring in a lot of fill, and I just was kinda wondering how you're gonna make that work with the house staying there and either feathering it off, and then you got the parking lot and the dumpster enclosure to the north. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and it would be a quasi-bridge with a, it's solved with a culvert for the wetland crossing and build the road up. But yes, it's a tricky engineering feat,
Okay.
but yes, we're well aware of that, but it would not impact the building. I think we're gonna be 32 feet away, 32 feet away from the back of the house. So we have ample engineering opportunities to make that crossing work without having impact the physical
So you're looking at a
component of the
bridge
building.
more than grading it out. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, with the
Okay.
culvert.
That's what I was thinking, I think it would be a better solution than trying to fill all that in, because I don't know what you do with the water.
Well, we've been working with our wetland consultant and exploring all the impacts, outside of the Historic Preservation Commission, but the wetland impacts and how we can engineer this and make our impact as minimal as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bonjero. Your expertise in this matter is always appreciated. Is there any other questions for our petitioner? Okay. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? We have some folks from the Historic Preservation Commission here, I believe. And they are going to come forward and speak. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Betsy Calhoun. More members of the Historic Preservation Commission would have been here tonight, but for scheduling conflicts. This is an exciting project, and as they said, the Historic Preservation is working with them. The Historic Preservation Commission, like the Planning Commission, is composed of citizens who take our appointed responsibilities seriously. We're trying our very best to be good stewards for our community's heritage, and we've been open and forthcoming about our concerns for the Orson Everett property. The entire site, not just the house, is on the local and national register of historic places. We do understand that this development will be a good thing for Livonia, so we've been working with Beaumont in good faith to respect the historic integrity of the Everett property by moving or rebuilding the replica outbuilding and to minimize other impacts upon the house. In the week since the planning study session, we've had time to reflect upon and discuss the surprise revelation from last week's meeting. In it, we learned that the actual reason for the 10-foot boundary at the north of the proposed loop road was so that Beaumont would not have to build a retaining wall. Now, the HPC has been very clear that the loop road threatens the structural and historic integrity of Livonia's only extant Queen Anne-style structure, and we've continually requested the greatest distance possible from the house. In response, we've been told repeatedly that zoning requires this distance, but this appears to not actually be the case. Last week, the 3 lanes of the access road were also mentioned. Maybe they won't be needed anymore if they've got an updated traffic study. I did confirm the traffic study, but maybe we could see that study to see what it talks about. I agree that with what everyone on our commission has been saying all along, that we think there's going to be an insignificant amount of traffic turning north into the movie complex after visiting the hospital. Beaumont's position is that they don't want traffic backing up, but consider that this extra lane is for traffic leaving, not entering. As they said, the HPC has a meeting scheduled with Beaumont and 18th Street developers on June 11th to discuss and resolve the concern of the distance between the house and the loop road. We welcome a continuing honest dialogue in order to work these issues out. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Calhoun, and I appreciate you coming and giving us that perspective.
I don't know if Kathy wanted to say anything. Okay.
We'll give her a chance. Why not?
Like I said, we're representing the commission.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi there. Kathleen Glenn. I live at 15566.
You can pull that down if you want.
Oh, thanks.
Instead of being on your toes. Thanks.
My address is 15566 North Blue Skies in Livonia. And Betsy's remarks were quite sufficient, but I did want to say we haven't seen updated plans, and we do have the meeting on the 11th, but if the plans are presented to us that day, we will need some time to look at them and discuss them. So I don't think we can do a vote at that time. However, if we do get some final plans and these issues have been worked out, we have no problem with voting at that time. But the several issues, some of the most important are the distance from the house to the road, the issue of the outbuilding, and one other concern is the planned use for the building, because an empty building will only deteriorate. And as Betsy mentioned, this is a very unique building in Livonia. So we appreciate the time and the consideration that you're giving to this, and we are sure we will come to a satisfactory solution to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll ask that the petitioner try to get those updated plans and information to you. I'm sure they'll be able to in advance.
Thank you.
And if for some reason they can't, you can always get those through the planning department as well, because they are part of our public record. So there's always ways to get those things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Okay, I don't see anyone else. Again, we always give the petitioner the last word. Mr. Kelly, if there's anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. With that, I will go to the commission and ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Long.
I'd like to offer an approving resolution.
Okay.
That the request to construct a professional medical office building at 39,000 7 Mile Road is hereby approved, subject to city council approval and the following conditions. Number one, that the overall site plan identified as sheet number C2.10 dated May 6, 2019, as revised, prepared by HKS Architects, is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number two, that the OPCC site plan identified as sheet number C2.20 dated May 6, 2019, as revised, prepared by HKS Architects, is hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number three, that this approval is subject to the petitioner being granted a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for any deficient parking. Number four, that the landscape plans identified as sheets numbers L1.10 and L1.20, both dated May 6, 2019, as revised, prepared by HKS Architects, are hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number five, that all disturbed lawn areas except for those with steep side slopes and any stormwater detention basins shall be sodded in lieu of hydroseeding and properly irrigated. Number six, that the exterior elevations plans identified as sheet numbers A5.00 and A5.01, both dated May 6, 2019, prepared by HKS Architects, are hereby approved and shall be adhered to. Number seven, that all rooftop mechanical equipment shall be concealed from public view on all sides by screening that shall be of a compatible character, material, and color to other exterior materials on the building. Number eight, that all trash containers shall be properly screened from view with masonry enclosure walls constructed, and the enclosure gates shall be of solid panel steel construction or durable, long-lasting solid panel fiberglass, and all ground-mounted mechanical equipment and mobile MRI facilities shall be screened appropriately using masonry walls and/or landscaping. Number nine, that this site shall meet either the City of Livonia or the Wayne County Stormwater Management Ordinance, whichever applies, and shall secure any required permits, including stormwater management permits, wetlands permits, and soil erosion and sedimentation control permits from Wayne County, the City of Livonia, and/or the State of Michigan Department of Natural Resources and Environment. Number 10, that only conforming signage is approved with this petition, and any additional signage shall be separately submitted for review and approval by the Planning Commission, City Council, and Zoning Board of Appeals. Number 11, that all light fixtures shall not exceed 20 feet in height and shall be aimed and shielded to minimize stray light trespassing across property lines and glaring into adjacent roadways. Number 12, that the specific plans referenced in this approving resolution shall be submitted to the inspection department at the time the building permits are applied for. Number 13, that the final alignment and geometry of the access road connecting to the Pentagon Center Entertainment Campus Road shall be subject to reasonable adjustments as determined by the planning and inspection departments, and the final grades, side slopes, road elevations, utility placement, and drainage of said roadway shall all be subject to the final approval of the City of Livonia Engineering Division. And number 14, pursuant to section 19.10 of ordinance number 543, the zoning ordinance of the City of Livonia, this approval is valid for a period of 1 year only from the date of approval by the City Council, and unless a building permit is obtained and construction is commenced, this approval shall be null and void at the expiration of said period.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Long, supported by Mr. Bonjero.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Tormina.
Related to item number 10.
Yes.
That does read that it would have to, the sign plan would have to come back before the commission for review. Is that something that I guess my question is to the commission, whether that is something you want to see or whether or not you feel comfortable sending that directly to the zoning board of appeals for any signage that is in excess of what the ordinance allows.
Well, the maker of the motion has the option on that one.
I would be fine if it just went to the zoning board of appeals, if it did not come back to the planning commission.
And supporter is?
I agree.
Okay. So we'll base the motion on it going directly to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Any discussion on the motion and that minor change? Seeing none, if the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Bonjero.
Aye.
Mrs. Smiley.
Aye.
Mrs. McHugh.
Aye.
Mr. Ventura.
Aye.
Chair Magna votes aye. Chairman Wilshaw.
Votes aye, motion passes. And again, congratulations, good luck with your project, and continue to work with the Historic Preservation Commission. I wish that goes well with you. Thank you. And that takes us to the pending items section of our agenda, which is item number 4.
And that's the approval of the minutes of the 1,142nd public hearing and regular meeting held by the commission on May 14th, 2019.
And I believe all members were present for that. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Long.
Support.
Supported by Mrs. McHugh. If there is no objection, I think we can show 7 to approve the minutes, and that will take us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mr. Ventura, supported by Mr. Long. And again, if there's no objection, we'll show 7 to adjourn the meeting tonight. This will conclude our agenda. I'd like to thank Livonia Television staff for their contribution. With no further business to come before the Planning Commission, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:21 p.m. And thank you, Livonia, and have a good night.